Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order and do the Pledge of Allegiance and have a moment of silence and in remembrance of 911. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Terry, do you want to do roll call, please?
Frost is absent. Helmut?
Yes.
Dolan?
Present.
Bailey? Absent. And Basardi?
Here.
Make a motion to excuse Joe Frost and Dave Bailey from the regular council meeting of September 11th.
Did Mr. Bailey pre-coordinate?
He told me this afternoon that he was going to be late. He didn't know how long,
Support.
so. Okay, we have a motion by Helmut, supported by Dolan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next is approval of the agenda.
Madam President, before approval of the agenda, I'd like to make a couple modifications. I'd like to make a request to move the PUD status update down to 10E for discussion. I would also like to add an agenda item, that being a discussion over the village bidding process.
Could we add PUD to make it item 11?
Yeah, I was just going to correct that.
Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely, my mistake.
Nope, no problem.
And
So then the bid
the addition would
process-
be 10E.
Okay.
Correct.
Bidding process, is that what you said?
Yeah.
There's no other changes. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Helmut, supported by Dolan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Code of Public on non-agenda items. Chuck? And we do have, as I've announced before, a 3-minute limit, and this is the time for the public to talk. There's going to be no responses back from council. We'll take note of what you've said, and then either the manager or the attorney or the clerk will get back with people.
We need to get that guy that does those fast TV commercials, I guess, because trying to do this in 3 minutes is going to be a little close to impossible, but I'll get right to the core of this then. Purpose for my being up here is to discuss the ordinance regarding outside sales. I had a very nice presentation, which unfortunately I will be unable to share with you because of the time constraints. Basically, I have a store called Unique Stuff. Didn't plan on having a store, didn't want to have a store, but after buying a building and having it for lease for 1 year and 10 months with 3 phone calls from people who wanted to live there, it became apparent that we needed to go to Plan B. So after reviewing the options, decided to open a store, but the store had to be unique. There go Unique Stuff. So basically what we sell is what we'll call yard art. These are things that we build and construct. They're heavy, they're big, they weigh a lot, they got to be outside. We have to support them, have to put 5 or 6 feet in the ground because they weigh 400 or 500 pounds. The store has been very successful. I'll read you some of the comments. We actually put this in the paper, but this is the kind of reaction that we get. It was a lot of fun, cool stuff, good prices. Will be a regular, love the unusual pieces, amazing items, found something cool right away. It was a beautiful experience. I love seeing one-of-a-kind items. The store is amazing, just what Oxford needs. So thrilled you have this store like this in Oxford. Cool stuff. Thank you for opening in Oxford. We needed this. awesome stuff. I have my eye on several things. I love this store, beautiful and interesting. I'll be back. Fun, unique, interesting. Use of materials, love. Repurposing, great prices. I'll be back. Diane Jasper, who happens to be from Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. Love it. I'll be back. Love, love, love this place. Awesome. One of a kind store. Thank you for bringing it here and so forth. So we have a really very enthusiastic audience. Actually, I had some of them sign a little petition that says, hey, the reason I'm here is because I saw your stuff outside. And where do these people come from? Burnsville, Texas, Davison, Oakland, Michigan, Addison Township, Davisburg, Metamora, Royal Oak, Metamora, Lapeer, Rochester Hills, Leonard, Waterford, St. Clair Shores, Pontiac, Dryden, Ortonville, Shelby Township, Canada, Henley City, Rochester, North Branch, Utica, West Bloomfield, Plymouth, Clarkston, West Branch. These people come from all over because they hear about the store. They're interested. It's like, I don't call it a store anymore. I call it an attraction. 4,000 people have been to this store. 4,000. We're only open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We average over 100 people a day. I'd like all 100 to buy something. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. But we have sold 500 items. So what I'm here tonight is to ask your consideration to modify an ordinance that we currently have. Currently, there are, is it 6 offenders that we have? There's 5 offenders who are selling items outside the ordinance under the you can't sell outside clause, outside sales. Unfortunately or fortunately, when we talk about ordinances, we have to not be concerned about the 90%, we got to be concerned about the 10%. So we do a snow ordinance so that we got 10 or 12 people because they're the problem child and we have to have an ordinance to deal with them. The other 90 people are all fine. We have the same situation right here. Now we have outside sales is only allowed in the C2 district with special approval.
Can I just halt you for a minute, Chuck, because you're over 5 minutes, and I want to check and see if there's anybody else in the audience who wants to make a comment, and let them do it, and then I'll let you come back.
My 3 minutes.
Huh?
We don't want you to, Dave.
You can't have mine.
Bill, do you want to get up and,
Okay, so I'm going to sit down and,
yeah, I'm sorry, Chuck, but you will let him finish, and then you'll get up?
Let him finish with Dave's 3 minutes.
Okay.
okay, the bottom line is that I'm not suggesting that we change the ordinance. I'm suggesting that we allow outside sales in all zoning classifications, not just in C2. I don't really see the logic that says it should only be allowed in C2. We already sort of quasi-agree with the concept of outside sales because we allow outside sales in the downtown. If we didn't think it was a good idea, we wouldn't allow the people in the downtown to have it. So, not suggesting that we modify the ordinance in any way other than to allow the planning commission to evaluate whether a business is worthy of having outside sales in all zoning classifications. And I'm not really, I try to understand the special approval. I'm not sure what that means. Does that mean it goes with the business only? Does it go with the property? I don't like the idea of special approval going with the property because you got a good guy one time, he sells the property, now we got a bad guy. So my position was there should be no special approval. It should almost be like a permit, that you have a permit and that at the end of 6 months or some reasonable period of time, that person's business is evaluated, and they either are renewed the permit or they're not because they didn't. I mean, the worst nightmare is, although I thought he was the greatest guy and a wonderful place to do business, but Tom's Hardware was not an example of my idea of what we want to have. The operator was a great guy, very helpful, but his business did not, in my mind, meet up to what we would want. That's all, I'm done. So really, I want you to direct the planning commission to open it up to all zoning classifications. I have a second subject, however, too, but I'll be back.
Okay. Bill?
It's been a while since I've been here.
Yeah.
We've missed you.
I missed you already. Bill Dunn, 14 Dennison, but I'm here on behalf of the township as township supervisor. I'm on the Water Sewer Committee, and we have people coming into town wanting to fill up some vacant land that we have. Right now, the township has an agreement with the village as far as how much sewer we can send down from the north, so many REUs. We've recently had people come in wanting to have more intense usage on a piece of property. What we've done in the north end was that we have assigned REUs for the parcels that are in the water district. And what we don't want to do is short someone. We had someone come up within the last 6 weeks and say, we'd like to do this development, and we say, well, we're going to give you this many. Well, we need 20 more REUs. My question to the village is, would you be willing to sell some of your excess sewer capacity? I know that you have a lot that you're not going to be able to use. I'm not an engineer, but you have a purchase capacity that could be 2.5 CFM, and you're only using 1.5. So you've got, maybe even 1,000 REUs that you're not going to use. I would suggest if you decide to deal with, you're not going to deal with the township on this issue. You're going to deal with the developer and work out your deal with him. It would probably take your engineer a little time to figure out, if you let 50 REUs go at the north end, what effect will it have going through the village? If you want to do this, it'd be fine, but if you don't, okay. But I do know that the village, since I live here, has excess capacity, and you could always use a few extra bucks, and why not just possibly sell off some of this? I wouldn't say sell off a lot, but figure out if you've got 100 REUs, if you want to sell off 25, keep 20 for yourself. If you could get back to me whether you would be interested in something like this, I don't expect it in the next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Take a little study of it and just say, Bill, we would be interested in talking to a developer to talk about REU sales for sewer. Again, you would be dealing with them, not the township. I'm just giving you the opportunity to get rid of some REUs that you probably will never use.
Thanks, Bill. Dave, do you want your 3 minutes? Chuck?
This is what I can do in 3 minutes. They say that history repeats itself, and in this case, I hope it doesn't. If we were to go back 30 or 40 years, the people who sat at your table, they made some decisions. They made one decision that they should have made and didn't. That was how they handled truck traffic. Back in those days, to me, it was pretty obvious. You had American Aggregate dumping out on Ray Road, just a smidgen away from Glaspie. Those trucks go down Glaspie, and when they get to Burdick, they're joined by Koenig. That gravel pit is close to Glaspie than it is to 24. You go a little bit further, and you have Hampton Block. They're closer to Glaspie than they are to 24. And then you go down Glaspie a little further, and you have Oxford Silo. Obviously, they weren't thinking. They didn't envision what we have here today. Because if they'd have taken the steps that they should have taken and had the vision that they should have had, all this traffic that we're dealing with would be going down Glassby today from Bray Road to
Boehner.
right, the Drainer. And we wouldn't be dealing with this. We wouldn't be dealing with the noise, the speed, or the dirt. So what I'm saying to you tonight is, don't make the same mistake. We should be putting a left turn lane in this village from the Crittenden Building south and from East Street north. Not in the village, but the south and the north. Why do we need that? The police chief, I'm sure, will provide you with the statistics of how many accidents we have in the south portion of the town. I mean, we've had 3 doozies. We had a lady, maybe it wasn't a lady, I shouldn't say that, a car. We had a car turning left into Genesis Credit Union. The only problem was the car was in the northbound lane. Not the southbound lane, the northbound lane. Are everybody with me on this?
I'm not.
Head-on collision. Wrong lane.
They were on the wrong side of the road, turning left.
Waiting to turn left.
They were, the northbound cars are coming and they're turning left in the northbound
Okay, so they thought they were in a turn lane.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then we had the cement truck incident recently. 40 feet of skid marks, dumping part of their load in front of my project. They had to get MDOT, a 17-yard dump, a big backhoe thing, loading this raw cement into the truck. I mean, that was like, could have been a catastrophe. And then the other day, I think it was Friday, first we had to go by the accident, the woman's or man's car, that's the front end's laying on the ground. First one med unit went, then another one, then the fire chief, then the police. So I don't know what the story is on that one, but it just does not make any sense. Someone is going to get killed. And why are they getting killed? Because we're not having the foresight to realize that we need this safe haven. Go over where you want to go. They make a provision for left turns. Go to Lapeer. They got 2 lanes in one lane on the other, and a turn lane. But it just does not make any sense that we do not take the time, do not make the effort to make this happen. I personally have gone to property owners, they'll sign up in a heartbeat, they'll donate their property. They all realize that this is not good for them, it's not good for their customers, and it certainly isn't good for our future. I mean, right now we are sucking wind compared to Rochester and Lake Orion, and we need to do everything we can do to make our businesses successful, to thrive. We haven't even got to the street program yet. We have 14 buildings for sale and 17 buildings for lease. That's not very good. And the people that are selling their buildings are taking an absolute bath. One gentleman in particular who I sold him the building, he's looking at $225,000 bath on selling a building that he's had for 10 years. So I'm just making my point that, hey, someone is going to get seriously injured and then we're going to say, oh shit, we should have done that. That ain't the time to realize we made a mistake. We have the opportunity now. This is never going to happen again. We're only going to do this road once in our lifetime. It took more than 3 minutes, but I was talking to guys.
Anybody else? Okay, presentations. Drew?
Okay, so as we discussed in our last meeting, I said I would be happy to bring by the design concepts for the new Village and DDA websites. So what I have for you, and they're included in your packet for the audience as well, we have the homepage layouts and a design of the interior page. The interior pages can look different, but the general design concepts are here. You'll see that there are, the tabs on the top, and as we scroll down, we have these widgets on the bottom. These things can change, and they likely will change, but the way that they're laid out that is also these background pictures, things like that, all that will change. But the general concept of this is what the website redesign committee has looked at and they have approved, and this is what we've been moving forward with. If any of you have any comments or feedback, we'd be happy to take them, and we can incorporate those things. The major components of the village homepage that really we focused on, and I think will be the largest difference from our current website to the new website, is the inclusion of this news and announcements section. Our current website does not have the capacity to do this very well, let alone be visually attractive in the process. So this news and announcements section can be to different RSS feeds to be distributed through social media platforms. They can also send out email notifications to subscribers. So this will be a great place to put ordinance announcements, public hearing notices, village events, things like that. All of that can be placed in here. And we even got nice pictures to go along with it. So that's one really exciting component. Other than just being more visually attractive, I think we've found a layout that also allows the most pertinent information that we have to be displayed right on the front. And it's also variable, so as our needs change, as we have different projects coming up or different information that we need to be directly visible on the homepage, we can do that. Also, the layout of these tabs and the subheaders within them is also easy to change. And we've got a search bar. That's nice. It's not, this is not the most complicated website in the world. We didn't want something that was complicated. We want something that's user-friendly, that people can get in, find the information they need, and move on. We've also got an events section that will be linked with the Downtown Development Authority's events and other events that, you can put whatever you want in there. So that's the village homepage. This is a copy of the interior page. You'll see that the accents for the village's sites are blue. When we get to the DDA pages, you'll notice that the general layout is pretty much the same, but with different color accents. This was done because we're doing it as a joint project. It's more cost effective to do it that way, but they are unique pages and they'll have their own different interfaces. So we look similar, we are related organizations, and we wanted to carry that through with this. That kind of is what that is. This is a copy of the DDA website. Again, like this picture, things like that can change. We will also potentially have the capacity to add, we've had conversations about putting drone footage in the background in here, so you come to the page and there's a short little video that kind of welcomes you to the community, things like that. We will have the functionality to include those different components. But again, they look similar. The DDA, because they have a larger social media presence than the village, in that we don't really have one, they have a social media portal down here. There are a bunch of different applications and widgets that Revise's website will allow us to use, but as our current capacity is, this general layout seems to make the most sense. As our needs change in the future, we can definitely consider those things. So I know we've got lots of different things on the agenda. So at this point, if anyone has any questions about these designs or where we are at in the process, I would be more than happy to answer those questions.
Thanks, Drew. Looks really good.
Good job, Drew.
I know you've spent a lot of hard work on this. Appreciate it.
So the one last thing I will add, where we are at in the process, is now starting the migration phase, filling in this template that we have. That process will take a little while, migrating all of our old content over, reorganizing it, implementing some best practices that both the DDA and the village have not done before. That will take a month or so. We're optimistic that end of fall we will have these websites live and we will be able to take advantage of the tools that we are investing in. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Okay, we'll go on unless anybody has any questions. We'll go on to the consent agenda for the receive and file.
I move to receive and file consent agenda items in category 7, A, I, and II, with the previously noted exceptions.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Dolan, supported by Helmuth. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And then we go on to B.
I move to approve the consent agenda items 7B, items I, II, and III, including bills totaling $89,809.47.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Dolan, supported by Helmuth.
Can I have a quick question? Did you say the dollar amount right?
He did.
Okay.
Terry, will you do roll call, please?
Sure. Helmut,
Yes.
Dolan,
Yes.
Sardi,
Yes.
Frost is absent, and Bailey absent.
Nope, he
No,
showed up.
Bailey's here.
Oh, gosh, when did you appear?
And
6:45.
I heard him sneak in there.
And my vote is positive.
Okay.
Okay. Next, we go into public hearing.
Before we open the public hearing, I can introduce the topic a little bit, just in case anyone who was potentially interested in speaking on it wants to speak about it. This is a relatively simple process, but we do have to go through the complete ordinance amendment process to do so. Basically, the village's code of ordinances specifically reference outdated editions of the International Property Maintenance Code and the International Fire Code, the governing documents for how buildings should be kept and built up to certain codes. Many of the other codes, like the electrical code, chemical code, things like that, through the state of Michigan as they're approved, are not listed in the language that specifically reference individual documents. These two are. This creates a potential liability for us, and so it was recommended by our building official to make these simple amendments. We're proposing to update the language to reference the most recently adopted code of each, of both the Fire and International Property Maintenance Code. Currently, the most recent editions are 2018. Those were approved last November. So, with that, if anyone has any questions.
We worked, just by way of further, we worked with Drew on this to create language where we won't have to do this again when there's an amendment, so that our language covers the continuation of updates.
Have we run this by Chief Schultz?
Yes.
Yes.
I have talked to Chief Schultz and I've talked to our building official. They already use these documents.
Because in the past, they've asked us not to adopt one or two sections. I didn't know if they were still doing that or not. Okay.
Okay, so I'll need a motion to go into the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing regarding the proposed, are we going to do them separate? Or are they going to be one ordinance?
There are two different ordinances, but we could,
There are two different ordinances. So they should-
we can do them in one public hearing.
To open the public hearing regarding the fire code and the property maintenance code at 6:59.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Helmuth, supported by Bailey. Terry, you want to do a roll call, please?
Sure. Bailey,
Yes.
Helmut,
Yes.
Dolan,
Yes.
Sardi,
Yes. Okay. Public? Chuck?
We're not going to talk about your store again, are you?
I don't come here very often. I want to take full advantage of it. My question is that Dave and I were builders. We got new ordinances, so how do we know what they are? Because we're building away and we got all of a sudden a new fire code or a new maintenance ordinance that we don't even know what it is.
These ordinances are already in place, Chuck. They're by reference. We've been using these for a long time. The trouble is we didn't have language adopting updates. All we're doing tonight is adopting the most recent version of what we already use. And we,
This really isn't new.
no, and we're creating language where we don't have to keep doing this in the future.
Because we get this, so that's in the International Fire Code.
Right.
Just like, that's a
Good question, though.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll entertain a
Motion
motion.
to close the public hearing at 7 PM.
Support.
Okay, we have motion by Helma, supported by Bailey. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Okay, go on to the first reading of the proposed ordinance amendment regarding the enforcement.
Do we have a date that we're scheduling the public hearing? Or the adoption?
The adoption, yeah.
The second reading and the adoption would be in 4 weeks?
Next meeting, right, Drew?
Yeah.
Next meeting.
2 weeks.
The next meeting.
We can do it in 2 weeks. We got all the notices in the paper that we need to, okay.
Yeah.
All we need now is a motion to approve the first reading.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of the proposed ordinance for the fire code and the property maintenance code.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Helma, supported by Dolan. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Special event application. I don't know, Drew or Joe?
I have that. This is something that a couple individuals came to the DEA and to Drew last week, and they weren't quite ready. We thought we were going to get some more information from them today and or yesterday, and so it is still incomplete at this time. We had hoped to get a couple of the sketch layout so I could pass it on to the other reviewers, the DPW, Fire Department, and the Police Department. Don't have the documentation for the layouts in Centennial Park as of yet, so this will have to be put off to the next meeting.
I move to set aside item 10B for the future meeting.
I'll support, and I have a question. What is the impact on the scheduling of our not addressing it right now?
Well, the ordinance, or the new rule that was passed here earlier this year was that we wanted 60 days advance notice. They're kind of already cutting into that. It's a relatively small, compact thing all in Centennial Park for the most part, so it's not a large, elaborate event. I think the reviews from the chief and DPW are going to be relatively quick and easy.
So we're in good shape for this particular one?
They can still do it. Yeah, it's really straightforward. They want to set up tents and vendors and do some things in the park. They won't be given the full 60 days that we recommend, but that's kind of put in place for the larger events such as, the parade and stuff.
It's my understanding that this is to replace Girls' Night Out.
Okay.
It's a form of it. They may have a few more vendors, but that's
Yeah.
to
And,
replace
yeah.
those.
So they want to set up the tents, and there will be inspections required and stuff for those tents and on the evening, and fire.
email out to the merchants about
Yeah. They just showed up last week, midweek, with the application. We had hoped, we gave them a little bit of feedback. They have some information there, but not complete.
Right.
And so I didn't want to send it off to the others without the complete packet.
Yeah.
One quick question. Do we know who titled the transition from Girls' Night Out to Witches' Night Out?
I do not.
I wonder if we'd want to rethink that language.
It was their idea of what they brought forward. Drew, he met with Drew, and I didn't meet with him.
So
Drew and
this,
Glenn met with
this
them.
event is being put on by different people than Girls' Night Out was.
Right.
It's somewhat of a play on it. It's a common, or I wouldn't say common, but other communities have done similar events. Ortonville, for instance, has their DDA puts on an event like this. This isn't a DDA-sponsored event, but the DDA is working with them on this. It's again, very similar to Girls' Night Out. Caveman and Pip and Funky Monkey Toys are the two businesses that are spearheading this initiative. And Joe pretty accurately described that they want to have some vendors in the park and get businesses in the downtown district to participate in kind of making downtown Oxford spooky. And,
Well, it's close to Halloween, too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's,
Kind of a Halloween theme.
yeah, and draw people down there in kind of an adult's night out. It is meant to be more geared towards older individuals as opposed to
now that you want to be careful.
No kids.
Drew, what does that mean?
Careful, Drew.
I'm not 100% sure. Let's get that.
Their
But yeah,
words.
that is for generally speaking, what we know about it. Glenn and I with the DDA have been working with them to the degree that we can, providing what support we can for
Right.
a non-DDA event.
Yeah.
But,
So in the future, council, when you have a motion to table in a second, the discussion on the substance is over and you can only debate the motion to table, but the learning experience for
Bob.
next time. I'm just getting
Did we
out of
table or
answering the
did we
old
set
question.
aside?
Same thing.
Oh. All right, we have a motion by Dolan, supported by Bailey.
I believe so.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, consideration of the Oxford Area Cable Communications.
The joint.
Contract,
Yep,
Joe?
joint representation agreement. Yes, Mr. Service dropped in a week or so ago. It proposed this in front of me, and my first reading of it, it does talk in there about having it reviewed by corporate counsel and everything prior to, and my first brush was it was something I need to bring to the council anyways. It was geared towards an effort being put forth by the Cable Commission to hire a legal representation to represent all 4 entities, to make some amendments or go after some PEG fees through the charter spectrum, yes. There was just a couple issues. I bounced over to Bob last week, and Bob reviewed it and has some recommendations for the council.
Yeah, so I reviewed this and sent you out a memorandum. We're supportive, and we're supportive. We want to sign an agreement that does what the words have been said. The words have been said that you want to hire a joint lawyer to go after retroactive potential PEG fees from the past. Is that correct or not correct?
Sorry, it's future, not retroactive.
For the next 12 months or something,
Right.
yes.
Right, for one, under current contracts, I'm sorry.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Could you
and-
introduce yourself?
Terry Stiles from OCTV.
Terry, I absolutely think that we want to support that. Unfortunately, what you're saying is not what's in the agreement.
I agree, and I know what your point is. It looks like Mike wants to represent
Right. So we,
fully for everything from here on out, and
Right.
it's strictly for those PEG fees.
so what I did, just to make it short, I offered language to the village council that says, I recommend that paragraph 2, which currently says he gets to represent us in basically all potential litigation, non-litigation matters going forward related to the renewal of each cable video services franchise agreements going forward. I mean, what we would agree to is to hire this person to negotiate and litigate, if necessary, for the recovery of PEG fees not currently included or being paid under existing franchise agreements only. That was what I understood you wanted to do.
Yep.
But we don't sign what you say, we sign what's in the writing, and I'm not comfortable with what the document says versus what you're saying I'm comfortable with. So can we modify the language?
Yes, you can, and I will do that and get that back to Joe. I'll have Mike send it to me tomorrow, and I'll get it back to
Yeah.
Joe tomorrow.
That'd be great. And if the council believes or votes for it, I'm comfortable with that pursuit. It just doesn't say that.
Yes, you're right.
Have the other 3 communities looked at this yet?
They've all signed it. Yes, they have looked at it, and they've signed it.
I spoke to Mr. Dunn about this, who's already left, and he was under the impression exactly what you're saying. He didn't realize that it really didn't say that. Same with Bruce.
Well,
That's exactly-
I'm glad that they said that, because I find it very troubling that, it's my understanding that Addison, Leonard, and
Yes.
Oxford Township all signed this without reading it and without taking it to their boards. And I find that extremely troubling. So I'm glad it got stopped with us, because I think that something like this should go to the boards and not just
They certainly-
blindly being signed by a manager or township supervisor.
That's fine.
So,
I completely concur. I appreciate Mr. Davis reviewing this and the input he's provided. I personally, even with the adjustments, would be opposed to any multilateral agreement that causes the village to lose any autonomy. I would vote no, regardless of whether the language is changed or not.
well, I have to thank Joe for catching that and reading the contract and catching
Well, the
it,
contract
because-
itself says that prior to you signing this, you've had your lawyer look at it. It says that.
Right. So did Oxford Township, Addison, Leonard have their attorneys look at it?
Addison did not.
Okay. Well, shame on them. Sorry.
So anyways, my recommendation is that if the language was changed to say exactly what you're saying, Terry, that I would support this.
Do you have specific language
I
you'd
put
like
it in
him to
here.
put in there? Can I have a copy of that to send him?
Right.
If it passes.
If it passes, it hasn't passed, but,
Right,
yeah.
thank you. Yep. That's fine.
Is it going to be suggested that the other entities actually read the contract and have their attorneys look at it?
I can do that.
We cannot vote to have that happen.
No, but I'm suggesting to Terry that
So I presented
she
it.
does what it says in the contract.
Presented it to the representatives of every community at our cable board meeting, gave them a copy of it, and we got it signed.
So you guys didn't read it either?
So the reason why this was presented in the first place was, Charter will not
Very
speak
casual.
to anyone that's not a representative of the community, period. I tried to talk with them, and they said they need to talk to Pauline Bennett, because initially we were talking about Addison. And so Mike designed this, or threw this together, and gave it to me so that I could give it to our board. I gave it to our board, I gave it to the representatives on our board, and this is how it came back. We've got it signed by every community but this one.
Do you see any projected concerns that come from a collaborative vote on public taxpayers' money?
Well,
I think we're established to represent this specific community, and I'm not interested in waiving that authority to a larger body or conglomerate of other communities.
When Joe and I met on this, we were concerned about paragraph 2, that it did not say what we're saying tonight, and that it gave a lot of power for future litigation, future contracts, future renewals of contracts. That is where your autonomy stands, and we didn't want to see any implication, and it doesn't say it, but any even suggestion that you were going to give up your right to how to designate your 5%, or whether or not, what you're going to do with that money, you know that issue.
Sure.
And that's something that you want to reserve, and you want to reserve the right to negotiate your future agreements. But I understand the concern to have joint representation on the economies of the scale, to go after one set of money that benefits the Cable Commission in total. And that would be PEG fees under current contracts, which Mike Watts, I believe, should be being paid and are not being paid. That doesn't change our contract terms. It would just be a recovery of money, strictly a recovery of money that would benefit all 4 communities.
Yeah, an attempt to.
An attempt. I don't know if he's going to be successful.
He's actually doing it as a representation of OACCC, of our board.
Right.
And I'm sure you read it in the newspaper, he was designated a certain amount of money to do that, to represent
Right.
OACCC. As a safety, so that he can communicate per community.
Right.
He's got the bylaws, too, in hand, the interlocal agreement, in hand. But he just wanted this as a safety measure so that they would communicate with him and that he could argue for all 4 communities.
And what I was suggesting, Terry, was I didn't see an issue with him performing that function.
Right, got
It's
it.
just the agreement didn't say that.
Got
That's
it.
all.
My initial one was the first, number 3, it was too vague, that he shall serve as lead counsel in all relevant preparations for and negotiations, as well as any litigations and related non-litigation matters, and to me, that was too broad and open-ended.
Got
I
it.
know he kind of wants to narrow it on this, and I think that makes sense.
Yep.
So all that having been said, my recommendation is not to sign the agreement in its current form, but to consider it with these modifications.
I move to set aside the proposed agreement and to make communications with the petitioner to negotiate acceptable terms via the village attorney with the village manager's oversight and approval, and then bring it back to council at a future point in time.
I'll support.
Okay, we have a motion by Dolan, supported by Bailey. Terry, do you want to do a roll call, please?
Sure. Sardi?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Helmut?
Yes.
Frost? Absent. Dolan?
Yes.
I'm,
Did you get a copy? Terry, did you get a copy?
yeah, could I comment?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm particularly pleased and approve of the fact that any changes are not sketched out. It merely says that there will be changes in the proposed document, which is great.
Okay. Let's go on to the next one. The consideration for the boring for samples.
Yes. if you-
Verdict in the parking lot.
Yep, and if you recall, back when we were doing our budgeting, we put some engineering amounts in for the parking lot, some engineering amounts for Burdick Street. We've already got the engineering amounts and approved row to do that task. The engineers both represented to us that to really do a best job, they need to know what's the subsurface are, thickness of the asphalt, where they're going to mill, do they need to find weak spots to dig out and prep the sub-base to be sure that it gets a better job. So I got some names from the two different individual engineering companies. The three of them came from those two together. CTS out of Burton, and it was McDowell and Associates out of Ferndale, and then there was one farther north, I believe, Testing Engineering Consultants out of Troy. So a little bit of discrepancy, and one of them was going to do 12 borings, one was going to do 13, one was going to do 3 feet, one was going to go deeper. One was kind of
An alternative for
a rate based on their estimates of what needed to go deep, and if they had to go deeper, there's a per foot cost. But even if we, and that was the CTS Materials Testing, Construction Testing Services. So all these folks are planning on coming out and doing it in one day, Burdick Street and the parking lot. If we went with the construction testing and inspection not to exceed $2,225, that would provide the bores, one extra bore from the McDowell Associates. If we had to go the extra foot deep at the 25-foot rate, it'd still be about $440 less than the next bidder. And we may not need to do those extra depths because the soils around here are pretty stable and there's not a lot of muck and stuff. So potentially we could come in the range that their estimate was of 1,810, but even if we had to go a few foot deeper here and there, we would more than likely still be about $400 less than the other bidder. And this would give the engineers what they need to prepare a better understanding for the road especially. The parking lot's a whole different issue. It will help there as well, but that's a whole other animal right now. So my recommendation was to approve the one from construction testing and inspection not to exceed the $2,225.
We have no additional questions based on the presented information and findings and recommendations. I move to approve the estimate from construction testing and inspection for an amount not to exceed $2,225.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Dolan, supported by Helmuth. Terry, do you want to do roll call, please?
Sure. Dolan?
Yes.
Helmut?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Sardi?
Yes.
Frost? Absent.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up to that, we did put the 8,000 in for the engineering, so when the engineering came around 5, so even adding this in, we're still below what we had enrolled in for the engineering to begin with, so on the Burdick Street project.
Good.
Thank you for that point.
Okay, and the additional policy procedure for bids. I don't know who wants to.
I had requested that this topic be placed on the consent agenda due to, I won't say concerns, but uncertainty as to some of our practices as to whether we had been subscribing to the policy, to the letter of law. There have also been some concerns expressed to me in a general sense in regards to our bidding in policy or our bidding practices. So I wanted to discuss in a public forum a review of securing our bids, ensuring that we implement a closed and sealed bid policy, an evaluation of how we solicit for bids so that it does not cause undue distress for prospective business conductors to the village. For example, we place items on one location when the work becomes necessitated, for example, a website, and ensure that we do subscribe to the practice of securing the proper number of bids. In recent months, there have been several instances which have come up where we have been, as a council, provided with prospective work and the recommendation that we accept bids or services from a particular vendor due to the fact that they are, quote-unquote, familiar with our systems. My perspective is that any business, any lawful business, functioning under proper terminology and legal responsibilities doesn't necessarily have to be familiar with our system. They just have to be familiar with what they're bidding on and their capability to do it. Recently, approximately a month ago, we received several bids in which there was a massive discrepancy, and it seemed as if there was a level of uncertainty as to who we should go with. I happen to believe that the taxpayer taxes are significant, and I believe that we should subscribe to one philosophy of receiving bids and awarding bids based on the lowest quality bid. I feel like every $1,000 or $1,200 we throw away is essentially taking one homeowner's tax base for the entire year and disposing it. And I am not confident that we are subscribing necessarily to our policy. So I wanted to discuss that. I wanted to determine whether we need to have an evaluation of that policy, potentially an update to it, and continue the process of ensuring that the sealed bid process is adhered to, because it is not. And I don't think we should have anyone with even a perception that they have a leg up or a leg down in the bidding process, and that's taking place.
Can I chime in?
Yeah, go ahead.
The answer to your questions are yes and yes. I did receive and pull out the existing purchasing, contracting, and selling policy. I think I wrote this one in 1968. So it's probably time for review and update, and there are things that need to be updated in this. So we do need to do an analysis, and we do need to have an updated ordinance or policy.
Thank you.
Agreed.
And especially when it comes to something large like the road project, which the engineer's estimate is like $125,000. That's really important that you follow very strict, closed guidelines. Some of the things like this $1,800 bid, these are coming in via email. It doesn't have the same integrity as an open, sealed bid. And some people will be fine with that. They probably, okay, I guess I'll put it in the mail. And it may prolong it a little bit, but again, if the idea is to secure the integrity, then that's the process you'll have to implement and follow. It makes it a little bit more cumbersome, but again, if you're wanting to make sure that there's no...
Keeps the integrity.
Yeah.
I would suggest...
leaky edges, that's the best way to do it.
We can bring back a modified version of this in the first meeting of October.
Thank you very much.
One thing that I want to say is that I don't subscribe to the lowest bid always gets the pick, because you get what you pay for, and sometimes what you're paying for at the low bid is you end up spending twice as much trying to fix it. So I wouldn't want that to be any part of this, but that's my own opinion, having been at this for several years.
And you have to make sure on your bid process that you're getting apples and apples.
Correct.
And in here, under Article 6, it does state currently that the council should have the right to reject any and all bids and to waive irregularities in bidding and to accept bids which do not conform in every respect to the bidding requirements, providing that the council shall not have the authority to accept a bid of lower specs without re-advertising. So there's already some adherence to that, or understanding of,
Any new one will have the
sometimes low is not good.
Just for clarification,
Exactly.
if you take a look at the record, I said lowest quality bid.
Yes. Since you guys already have...
Lowest
right.
competent bid
Yeah.
and quality, right.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think the integrity is of the utmost importance, and perception is reality. We need to project that we are subscribing to our own policies and that they are suitable.
Agreed.
Right. I agree. Anybody else?
Yeah. Does not the state of Michigan put out standards for this kind of thing? And wouldn't we not be considered to have violated the state of Michigan's
This document doesn't violate necessarily the Michigan standards. It's antiquated. Our values, purchases at $1,000, I mean, those levels have to be adjusted.
Yeah.
And the language is awkward in terms of some of the things that Eric has raised. It was written long ago. But our new version would conform with all of the state standards.
I'm just suggesting that at a minimum, we ought to be in conformance with not only the letter, but also the intent and the
Right.
and the philosophy
Right.
of the state of Michigan.
Right. Agreed.
My suggestion is if you wrote that in 68, which was 50 years ago, that there's probably numerous other ones that need to be reevaluated
Right.
too, so that might be something that somebody needs to work on.
Drew might find me to be old.
I hate to say
I thought you were
unbelievable,
only a year or
but
two
You want
older
to
than
come
me.
out to witches with me?
Thank you for addressing that matter.
okay. Number 11 was the PUD agreement that was moved from the consent agenda.
This was another topic that I had brought forward this week, just inquiring about the status of the project. And I understand and have been advised that there are some idiosyncrasies and some changes that need to be ironed out. As we're a community that to some degree subscribes to the One Step Ready, I want to find out if there is anything the village could be doing to expedite whatever it might be that your project needs to take additional progress, Mr. Wackel? If you could provide an update and possibly advise the village what you need from us to maintain compliance with the PUD.
Dave Weckel, Oxford resident, long time. We've been working on this project for several years, as you know, and it was approved, I believe, in 2016. And the PUD was, I believe, finally approved amended in 2017 for the third story. Well, as you know, if you drive by East Burdick, there's some areas that have been cleared. We've taken down 2 houses, and we're getting ready to build the first building, which has that third story on it. And when I walked the site, I determined and brought it to everyone's attention that I don't own it now because I haven't had a transfer of deed of that particular lot, but I would own the catch basin and part of the street. I don't think that's the intention. And I know I don't want the liability of it, and because that could be serious. So I believe it was in April or May, I brought it to Chris Corey's attention and Drew, and we've been working on it, and it's taken forever. And it's not anyone's, I don't want to point fingers anywhere, because if I did, I'd be pointing just at myself just as much. I have had the architectural drawings finally were submitted, returned to me, the hard copy. Everything was done electronically, and there weren't dimensions on one time, just where the structural steel was involved, and it's quite complicated. And I said, no, it's more than that. I need to have this corner clipped, and so that was another 3 weeks and 2 weeks and whatever. A week here and a week there, and it's been several months now. But I know we have to have a legal description that's changed. And part of my approved PUD had the legal descriptions of all the lots that were included in this project, and that needs to be changed. So I'm meeting with Houston Kennedy in the morning to see what we need to do. And then we have to obviously go to the county for a property split for a couple of the lots, because I own about 70,000 square foot of property, and some of it's going to be returned back to the village. So that part that's going to be split off has been identified in the PUD, but it hasn't been identified in the form of a deed. So we're going to get that part straightened out, and we're going to also get the confirmed that the village lots are going to be able to be deeded back to me, so I could actually sell the property, because at this point, I can't do that either. Nothing really can happen legally. We've been proceeding on a handshake, which I don't have a problem doing. I've done it a lot in my career. But this catch basin and road on the property was quite concerning. Now, unfortunately, because of some issues with Ken Liddell, building official, he wasn't able to look at this to prove it. But it's been turned in, and if he's here Thursday, he'll look at it and hopefully look at it and prove it, and we'll get moving forward again. But that's the main concern, point that we're dealing with a legal document. My other alternative is I have as a plan B, you always have to have a plan B. The parking lot that I'm proposing, I could still build that. It's all on my property. I could still build that. I just wouldn't have the same benefit or cost, however you want to look at it, of satisfying the village requirements, because I'd be providing parking for my own buildings. And at that point, I could keep it private, or I could sell it to the village, or I could lease it. There's many other options at that point. I have to meet with my team, and we're going to make a decision which way we're going to go. But the first step is with the surveyor. And probably, I'm sure I'll have to talk with Mr. Davis and review the documents and say, okay, is this good? Are we good? Are we moving forward? Are we stalemate, or what are we doing? So that's where we're at. And if Drew has any more to add, I'm open to suggestions. There hasn't really been anybody that's just sat on it at this time. We had early on in the project, we had some serious sitting on documents. My easements with Edison, I don't even know how long those were sat on, 6 months, 8 months before those were ever approved. There's just little things like that that make a job take a long time.
The property split and combinations is something that I think that, like you addressed, in the short term can be handled, right, relatively quick.
I think so. Yeah, it should be able to be.
Yeah.
But if you ever have, an evening that you're bored, you want to go check it out, just walk down that corner, and you'll clearly see the property corner stakes where they are. They're in the road, and I know that's not a good thing.
Good observation.
What do we need to do on our end to expedite, whether through intense conversations, meetings, to get everybody on board, in that the first deadline is approaching? We've already missed one season of construction, and we seem to be not much further along, with a significant portion of the downtown in a perpetual state of inactivity.
We had an extension, and I don't remember when it was. I know the night. You know the date?
Yeah, it was in November of last year.
Okay. Yeah, we asked for an extension from DDA, and we granted it, but we actually swapped the buildings, because when I started thinking about the project, building it, I was going to create an island out here with this one little lot and build the other one first, and that wouldn't have made any sense because we have no place to store anything. So we were going to do that little one first, or the smaller one. It's not really little, it's still 10,000 square foot. But that seems to have all the issues on it.
Is that the 32 or 36?
32.
32 in the corner then? Okay.
That has the issues.
Okay. It's a nice grassy lawn there in the corner. Again, and that one, the other ones have to have some split combinations because there's multiple lots there. So you're going to get with Kennedy, produce a new legal description and a new layout, the new survey for that?
Yeah, he would have to create a new legal description for the parcel, and parking lot. Well, the parking lot's been, we already have a legal description for it. If you look at the approved site plan, I don't know what page it's on, but it's in there already.
Okay.
It shows clearly what the village owns and what I own, and how much I'm giving back to the village in exchange for those other lots.
Well, we'll
Do we have any recommendations from administration? Because frankly, this is the first official status update that council has received.
Yeah. It's been a lot.
I would like to see that there, I know council is extremely supportive of the project. It's phenomenal for the village. However, we don't see any action. There doesn't appear to be much communication that is being disseminated to council, and I'd like to see regular updates on the project. I'd like to have a projected period of time in which we're going to see action, and then regular incremental updates.
And we can do our best to communicate with the gentleman here, and some of these things getting off point by getting those splits and combinations taken care of will at least free up to be able to go forward. Some of those deadlines, I think, were December 30th of this year. A couple of the ones I was reading in there, I'm not as familiar with it in the background. Drew's worked on it longer, but some of those do have some deadlines at the end of the year, so we can maybe get some of that part, the legal descriptions and the lots and splits combinations taken care of. To cover those, but it's been, and then the relatively short-term issue with Ken LaBelle, our building inspector, was a family emergency where his son out of town just last week or so. We haven't heard from him yet.
He'll be back Thursday.
Okay, he should be back Thursday. So, Drew, you have something?
I'd like to see us do a better job mitigating some of these emergencies. I understand emergencies take place; they do for everyone. However, when an emergency takes place, we shouldn't keep the developer waiting in the hooks because of our
That's only been a week.
Inopportune schedule.
Yeah, his son had a stroke, so he had out of state.
That's a big deal.
And it was just last week, so wasn't a summer-long event. Drew,
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that we have had regular conversations with Dave. Myself, Chris Corey, Glenn over in the DDA. Perhaps it is our fault for not always communicating those conversations and letting you all know that we're working with them, and these things do just take time. We have been trying to do our best to get these reviews done as quickly as possible and get him the information back. Is on the larger scale in our community development processes, we are trying to streamline them and adhere to those one-stop ready ideals of being development friendly. And so going forward, I will make sure that between Joe and myself and Terry that we give you guys updates on things that are going on. And we will be obviously working with Dave over the next couple months to get those next milestones accomplished.
Yeah, and there was relatively little. There was some holding patterns going on this summer outside of your help, like I said, with DTE and stuff. Then, the notice of that, hey, correction, and then go back to the drawing board on your buildings. That's all stuff that kind of has to go back through the mill.
I just think a project of this magnitude, this should be a drop everything and assist the developer type situation.
I agree.
Let us know what we can do for you, Dave.
I will. When we met, do you remember when we met this summer?
Yes.
Was that May?
No, I think it was June.
Yeah.
Okay. We met in June. I could look it up, but it's not, I don't think it's that important. What was important, though, that Chris did the research, and we were able to reduce the amount of, since we were going to reduce the amount of the building, we did not have to go through the whole process totally again, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
But it's still taking us a long time. And I know my structural engineer, and you haven't met him, he's not the civil engineer, the structural engineer took a long time to give us a response on what we needed to do to build on that corner to stabilize. We have some soil issue also that showed up in the soil borings, which we have a copy of those, but we're dealing with that too. So all those were in those documents, and it just took a long time. It seemed like it took forever. But we're moving forward. Okay. Obviously you can see we've taken down 2 houses, and take down the other one as soon as I get my final approval.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
I do anticipate doing the parking lot this year, irregardless. The PUD agreement states that I don't get a C of O until the parking lot is done on any building, the way I understand it. or recall that. I read it probably the year. But it also says that once I have the parking lot completed and named back to the village, then I don't have to worry about any deadlines.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
What I'm hearing out of this is that we need more FYIs.
Yeah, and like I said,
And I've already talked to you and to Glenn, because council needs to know what's going on. We don't have to discuss it here, but just an FYI that this is a holdup or whatever, so we know what's going on.
absolutely. We can pass that along as those bounce back.
Okay, public comments?
I'm Kula Stoll from Burdick Street Equipment. Some of you I know, some of you I don't, but we had received a ticket for our demos. And I'm not sure what to do with this, to be honest. I don't know if I'm supposed to come up here. I don't know if we're supposed to go to planning. I don't know if I'm supposed to be put on an agenda.
Let me help and interject a little bit. The outside sales, things that Chuck talked about earlier, this is one of the areas in which the outside display of sales isn't currently available to be requested, and that's how they fell into that.
So is there a building official infraction?
Yeah, code enforcement.
All right, so she would need to contact the code enforcement officer.
Well, and then there isn't outside sales allowed to even be requested, as Chuck mentioned before. They're not in that C2 district where it is allowed. And that's
Previous, and we actually did get permission, and we've had permission, and I don't know if it was from you guys or from planning, but we've been doing this for 8.5 years, almost 9 years now, and there were certain caveats that they had asked us to do, and we've done them, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, move your demos for a business like ours to maintain, to stay in business, you know. Everybody else in our area puts their demos out, their machines, their equipment. We have side-by-sides and lawnmowers and whatever else, but we take them in and out.
You take them in at night?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we sure do.
Do you have that approval document or the stipulations? Or?
No, and I mean, to be honest with you, when we were doing all this, I mean, do I have it someplace? Yeah, I mean, the reality is that we run 2 businesses, and we have a real estate holding company, Steve and I, and
okay.
we've got 43 employees, and we're busy doing business so that, you know what I mean? And
I got it. All right.
so I guess that my question is to you, where do we go from here?
And I reached out to them folks at first, and we were trying to look back, and I tried to go back with them to find out, okay, what was there, what was done. 2009, they got a special land use to operate their business, the lawn care and landscaping business out of that thing. At the same time, I think it was about where you opened up the retail business. I reached out to Jim Wilson because they directed me to him, and I had some conversations with him. Initially, he thought, oh, well, they weren't categorized as this, and he thought they did. Then I called him back. I talked to him 3 times in 1 week, and then the last conversation with him was, well, I guess they were in that the C1 district, so maybe they weren't ever really allowed to put stuff on the front grass. And I asked him, well, would you please reach out to them and tell them about our conversation, because versus me calling you back and telling them hearsay what Jim told me. I don't know if you ever did.
We never made a transition.
Steve, you need to come up here.
So,
I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to dig out and find in the 2009 documents. I didn't find anything directly related to that myself. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
I get it.
Yeah.
We were in there, like I said, before the transition happened. And, but, sorry, but the reality is that it's been 8.5 years. And I get the fact that everybody's like, we're going to be doing this and we're going to be doing that because so-and-so's doing this and so-and-so's doing that. I don't want to sound like I don't care what everybody does, but we stay out of everybody's hair. We stay out of trouble. We do our business over there. I bring a lot of people. I have a huge advertising budget. I am a destination place for the village of Oxford. And I regularly, if you watch, baseball or football or any type of cable, you'll see us on there. And it's all bringing people to the village. And so what I'm asking is that we just want to continue on how we've been doing things for the last 8.5 years, almost 9 years.
And you got a fabulous looking business, they got a fabulous front yard, they got brand new equipment out there that's fabulous, they take it in every night.
Why don't we
It
look in?
appears they got caught up into maybe a glitch somewhere that they're trying to find a way that we can help them with to allow that to happen.
Somebody to let us know sometime,
Okay.
that's all.
They fall
We
under
will.
the same criteria of all the other businesses.
Thanks.
They fall under the same criteria as the 6 other businesses. They're doing outside sales just like I am. That's why I suggested that the council recommend to the planning commission that it be allowed in all zoning classifications, and each person has to go there and make their pitch. The planning commission did not have the authority in 2009 or earlier to grant anybody a variance to the zoning ordinance. Not happening on the planning commission. They don't have the standing to do it. They'd have to go to the ZBA to get approval, not to the planning commission. The same is true of the Sunoco guy. I distinctly remember when we gave that guy permission to put that digital sign up, the deal was he had to conform to all the existing ordinances. That's how we got that digital sign. So there were no deals. These things have been going on for years, and if I hadn't been opening my store, we wouldn't be here tonight. So that some of this stuff has been going on for years in violation of the ordinance. But the whole idea is to correct it. And I will say this, man, we've come a long way since Joe's been here. I mean, we got a few more little problem children to deal with, but I think on the whole, we're running pretty pure. I mean, I can remember the days I took Joe Young around, 75 violations in 1 hour, 75.
Thank you.
I went through the whole village this weekend. I found 4.
Good.
Appreciate that.
Anybody else? Okay.
Well, I think he wants to
Oops.
speak.
Just 2 comments. For starters, we talked about the whole transitional zoning. We were actually in before the transitional. It all got sped up, and we were trying to buy the place because we had a fake site plan turned in for us and all sorts of interesting things right at the beginning because another gentleman wanted our building, but we won't talk about that. But another thing too is that I get a little upset about is that we've been there 8.5 years and no problem. A small business comes in the town and puts all his equipment in the parking lot, and then we're the victim of it. We've been there 8.5 years without a problem. That's my biggest thing. Nobody said anything.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, we'll go on to staff. Mike, do you have anything? No? Terry?
A plant was in last week, and we did some preliminary investigation. She's pretty much so far verified what we reported to you at the last meeting. Our concerns and some of the problems that really need to be fixed. And we're just going to continue on. We have a lot of preparation to do for the audit, a lot of unreconciled items, unreconciled accounts, a lot of adjustments that were made, and a lot of that has to do with the excessive transfers that we have. So we've already received some of the recommendations, but instead of giving you pieces of information, I think we'll have them compile those in a list so they can be presented formally to you, and you can see where we need to go.
Yeah.
But it does need to be fixed. We do have issues that need to be taken care of and cannot keep being put off. That's where we're at.
We've had a small peek under the hood so far so they can understand and get a better idea of what to tell you where we're at.
Don't gloss over it. We need to be told the truth.
Oh, well.
And not everything's
Yeah, I'm
coming
not
along.
going to tell you what you want to hear, that's for sure.
I don't want you to do that.
I'm going to give you a reality check.
Yeah, that's fine. Bob, do you have anything?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Joe?
I got a few things. talking about the engineering bids that we did, we put 8,000 in for the parking lot. Of course, that's a much larger project. Both bids came back over the 20,000 range. I don't want to divulge where they're at, but let's just say they're well over what we'd planned. There's a couple of differences in the bids. They brought them in their own format. Little differences. One included some staking and construction staking. One didn't. I just kind of got to look back. I talked to Doug Skyless today for the first time. He called just to kind of see where we're at. I did indicate that we're going to look at the boring stuff tonight to hopefully at least get that taken care of, at least the Burdick Street part, which we know we need to move on. We're going to go back and maybe see what other, is there a better way to maybe do a concept engineering of not a full engineering, to maybe be a little less costly in the front end to get a better idea, then break it out into phases if you have to because of the cost. Because the cost to totally reconstruct the project or the parking lot, fix the drains, remove the building, remove the cement, total everything that we talked about that day was in the 500,000 range. That's worst case scenario is cost, best case scenario is the project ends up this. That's the best built, last forever thing. There probably is some middle ground in there to do the crush and shape and stuff like that. Then engineering probably won't change a whole lot once you do the final engineering, but he said perhaps there's some ways to do, a lesser amount of engineering, not the full in depth, but to give you some ideas then to work on knowing what you know now. How do you want to proceed? Do you want to do something in phases, or do you want to, he worked at a project, I can't remember what it was now, over in Almont perhaps. They did their parking lot in 6 phases, only because they were tied to certain funding that was coming over certain years. Not the best way to do it, but he said they're able to work and tailor it to whatever needs we have. The bids were really quite close between NOAC and Rowe, but they weren't ready for public display and public consumption because they were way more than we had planned. The project isn't going to get any less to fix, maybe just a different alternative that might be less. So I'll continue to work out to him and maybe bring you by something to chew on better next time. Number 2, our phone system that we approved and got lined up, that's scheduled to be installed next Friday the 21st. They'll be here Thursday to kind of do some training on the new system, and then Friday try to change it out. Had a call today for a possible request to work on a homecoming float in the barn in the back there, the building that had been used in the past, I've been told. They had some concerns that, hey, we heard it might be going away, but then I told her how the council just approved the middle school robotics team, was it, to use it through the fall. So I told her I didn't think it was going away between now and homecoming, but it wasn't going to be on the agenda tonight for approval because there wasn't time, and they may have to wait till next meeting. I just want to let you know that that's out there, so it'll probably be a request. I think it was the leadership group is what she talked from, that they've used it in the past, one of the groups. So we'll be coming for a request to use that to build a float. The Experience Oxford, the Wildcat statues you've seen around town, they were supposed to do their event and auction them off last week. It kind of petered out to where there wasn't a lot of input and going on, so they kind of tabled it. They're going to pick them up in the next week and just store them versus their plan to auction them off to some of the other businesses. But they should be gone in the next week or so. I've been getting a few requests about distributive antenna systems, the small cell wireless, the things you see on the small poles, like there's one behind the cinema. There's one down by Sue's condo complex. And then I read something through the Road Commission's quarterly newsletter, how they just signed an agreement with a company that's throughout the county using their vertical infrastructure, as they call it, to sign an agreement with them to place these things throughout there. And the Road Commission estimates $200,000 to $250,000 a year annually in fees that they can charge back to these. So I read that agreement. It really spelled out how it worked. It didn't tell how much they get per pole or per location. The managing director of Road Commission passed my name on, and so that gentleman from that company reached out to me and wanted to at least come and talk to us next week about it. I talked to Bob a month or so ago about this. We get these people calling and they're representing, Sprint or somebody under some alternate name or consultant. They're trying to get their foot in the door and get this infrastructure out there, but they kind of want to not show their hand that they're the big boys. And we need to kind of have something in place so when they do show up, we're ready for them. Right. We've had a couple of issues recently with one in particular, the grease fats, the restaurant grease fats. We were working on it. Dan was on the phone with them today. I listened. He was beating them up pretty hard, and they relented, and they're going to come back out and clean it again behind 5-1 Diner. They were there just within 90 days. we're trying to look at some alternates. Maybe at this time of year, when it's in the evening, there's a couple solar lights we could put on there. Maybe there's an issue with they're out there in the dark dumping it. Maybe they're just being careless. We don't know. The grease hauling company said that they do have internal containers that are available that they offer, but again, that takes up someone's space. They have to deal with the grease inside. We don't know if that's an option, a viable option or not, but it may get to the point where it becomes such a burden on us. You get blowback. We got guys, we have to call them and hound them and get it done. Everyone's pointing fingers because 5 restaurants are using it. We don't know what the best solution is. Some of them aren't a problem. You have 1 or 2 users use it, and they're accountable, and it's not an issue. This one over here is an ongoing issue. We're working to try to find some solutions there. Another issue that when I first started here, the summer sewer tax credit, I found it was a little odd in the way it's done. I understand the concept. If you're not running water down the sewer, why should you pay for the sewer? But there's a better way, I think, to do it, and that's by having a separate meter on. This estimation, and we do over a 6-month period of what your water usage was, but then we have snowbirds who are gone 2 of those months, so their water usage is down, and then we kind of are guesstimating a stab in the dark of what their usage was that we're going to charge them and deduct from their bill for the sewer usage for the water that they use to water their lawn. It would take some time, and it's going to be some homeowners' cost to buy a new meter and have that meter installed and then have an inspection. But at that point, anytime that meter runs, we know exactly what they use it for, and we don't have to ever worry about that again. It's something I'd like to work on and maybe in place for next summer. It might cost them $400 to get that done. But the people that, well, I only use this, and they're back, and my average is off. Well, you did too many months, and it's just really a stab in the dark. I totally get we don't want to pay sewer to Oakland County Sewer that isn't going down the sewer for treating, but I think maybe there's a better way to do it, and we'll try to work on some options there. The outside sales displays, we had a few issues there we dealt with. I reached out to Mario from McKenna. We talked about a few. I reached out to MDOT to try to find out if there's any additional patching work to be done on M24, because some of the stuff's still around. The lane closure electronic board 3 miles north of town is still there, stating the same thing it did from a month ago. I haven't heard back from them. As soon as I hear something back from MDOT, whether that's over, I'll let you know, but I haven't heard. So that's all.
Okay. Council comments?
Drew.
Davis. Oh, Drew, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Hard to see Drew over there, isn't it?
I know. It's so far away.
I just have two quick things for you. One, in regards to the outdoor display and sales ordinance, we have put a significant amount of time and effort into learning about the history of this and why it may or may not have been enforced, the background of all of it, and we can provide some information to council via a report, hopefully at the next meeting, if that's what you all would like to see. It sounds like members of our community are interested in having this looked at. It's something that was brought to Planning Commission just as a concept that we knew we had some complaints about it, but we can provide the information on what we know about it and how we've gotten to this point for you all, and so I will work on having that in as a report item in the next agenda for you. The second thing, last Friday I had the opportunity to go to a workshop at Oakland County regarding their brownfield program. It's similar to a municipally sponsored brownfield, but it's, they do a lot of the legwork for you. So I think that can be a good tool for us. And then I met with our planning consultant, Mario. We had a nice conversation about some of the ways that we can be more proactive and also provide better services to developers in our community. So I've been working with Glenn, I've been working with our consultants, and we are actively pursuing ways to be more proactive with our developers and also be more economic development friendly in helping property owners market their properties that they'd like to sell, things like that. So I do want you to know that that's something that I'm putting a lot of effort into. Joe is as well, and Glenn. And we hope to have some results and some tangible things from the trainings and opportunities that I've been able to attend I will be at the Redevelopment Ready Communities training this Friday. It's sessions 4, 5, and 6. And through all of these, I think we've got some tools that we'll be able to implement internally to our own processes and working with the services we're getting from our consultants to provide an even better level of service. That is our goal. So just an update that is a focus for us. That's all I have for you.
Thanks, Drew. Okay, council comments. Dave, I'll have you go first.
Yeah, well, I apologize for not being present at the start of the meeting today. I had a work assignment north of Lapeer, and fortunately, we got more done than we anticipated, but unfortunately, that took more time, so I was late. So, I'm sorry.
Okay. That's it. Eric?
9/11, I think it's important to obviously point out the significance of the date 2001, but also 2012 for the incident that occurred in Benghazi. Matters like this, I think it's significant to remember this wasn't a hurricane, it wasn't an earthquake, it was an attack on our country. The threat still exists. It's important to name the threat as radical Islamist terrorism. As a result of that threat still existing, it's important to pour our support behind the police department, the firefighters, and everybody who provides to the welfare of the community. I don't think the significance of the date can be overlooked. It's become almost rather cliche with gleaming sunshine-backed pictures on Facebook, but the reality of it is thousands of people died, and people placed in positions to prevent those attacks didn't do the right thing. You need to prevent in advance, not fix after. So I just wanted to point out the significance of the date if it has been lost on anyone, and I doubt it. Secondly, the outside sales. This is another matter that is, I think, significantly important. We have a responsibility to back our businesses. I understand it's a delicate balance between appearance and aesthetics of a community, but we also need to provide a method to allow these businesses to display product in a reasonable way. We should be there for the businesses, and I would like to see a significant amount of work in a expedient fashion poured into this so we can come up with a compromise for that. Aside from that, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mo?
I'm not really interested in approving another ordinance in the wrong fashion. The village spent a lot of money about 15 years ago to codify our ordinances. They're on file at the courthouse, they're on file at the library. This fire ordinance, and it needs to be in the right format and get codified. And then we start going back and working on all the other ones and get them right into shape, because I think we're just wasting a lot of money not doing it right. That's it.
Okay, I want to echo Eric's comments about 9/11. I almost wish we hadn't had a meeting today because they're having a Patriots Day celebration in Lake Orion tonight, which I think we should have all been at, but it's a very solemn occasion, and I think that we should never forget, and I agree with Eric about the danger still is out there. In conjunction to what you were talking about, the grease thing over here, it's my understanding that there's now going to be another restaurant moving to where the sushi place is. So now you're going to have 7. We need to come up with something fast in order to solve this problem, because our ordinance officer and Glenn, they're over there every day checking this, and that should not have to be. And my other comment is that all you got to do is follow the grease drops in the parking lot to know who's creating the problem. And so we need to have some rules or regulations. I know there's some restaurants that keep the grease in their restaurant and take it out the next morning after it's solidified. I don't care, but it needs to be fixed. I'm tired of it.
The grease-
I'm tired
the
of
grease
walking
hauler.
through the grease on the sidewalk, in the parking lot, and there are other people that feel the same way. I've had it.
The grease hauler actually has solutions, but they're inconvenient and they cost money.
Correct.
So we need to work, let me,
We've been discussing this
we've
for
been
a
trying to get
year.
a single hauler, we've been trying to.
Exactly, and I want something done. I'm tired of it. It's just ludicrous that we keep talking and talking and talking about this. I'm over my head with this. The other thing I wanted to mention is I find it troubling that other communities' managers signed a contract for the Cable Commission without reading it and without understanding what was in that contract. And further troubling to me is that they did it on their own with apparently no attorney oversight, which it specifically says in the contract, and that they didn't even take it to their board. I can't tell you how disappointed I am in those managers that did that. So that's all I've got to say. I could go on, but that just should not have been. And I want a report on how much it costs, the Lone Ranger thing. It's my understanding that you have it from the DPW or
There's some
something,
hours,
but
yep,
we
from
need to get the
DPW.
police department, please, report on that. And I think that's it.
Can I respond to the thing about the 9/11 thing?
Yes.
Mr. Dolan said it exactly right. He used the word Islamist. Islamic refers to a great world religion. Islamist is totally, totally different. And he did it, he said exactly the right thing, and I exactly support everything he said.
Okay, and we don't have a closed session, so I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved at 8:07.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Helmuth, supported by Dolan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.